we have in our midst a man of God who is here to actually continue his effort in spreading the good news of Jesus Christ and making some major clarifications on some issues that we might have. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you so much.
Now, Pastor Logan, your name, the church you're from, your title for our viewing audience, please.
My name is Apostle Joe Dennis Logan, of course, that is with the title, an ordained minister. I'm the senior pastor and founder of the Hallelujah Sanctuary Church. We are located in Brooklyn Center, 6870 Shingle Creek Parkway, Brooklyn Center. And I'm glad to be here.
Thank you very much, Pastor Logan. Of late, we've been discussing the church and the decision of some church leaders to center their message on the idea of offerings and tithes. We, after gauging the opinion of a lot of churchgoers, have realized that a major complaint is that the main message of winning souls for Jesus Christ, of purifying the mind and connecting that spiritual connection with God, is being slipped under the carpet for those people who are just concerned about your tithes, your offering, this kind of offering, this kind of contribution, do this for, it's become so monetary that the central theme of man's personal relationship with God is losing its essence. What do you make of this opinion?
First of all, I will have to address it from the two sides of the coin. The coin has two sides. Number one, the gospel is not all about money. However, it takes money to run the gospel. It's a language that is difficult to be understood by many who are not on the inside of the circle. The gospel of Jesus Christ is totally free, but with the world we live in now, it is very expensive to run the gospel. Take for instance, I will speak from a personal point of view. We are in a 9,000 square foot building. It costs us $4,500 to run that building. I'm talking about just on rent, not utilities and what have you. Well, now, what's the purpose of the building? The purpose of the building is to find a conducive area where folks can gather to worship God. However, the owner of the building is not giving us the building free of charge, and I believe the same principle is applied to everyone out there. The building is not given to us free of charge. Everything in the building costs money, so definitely there has to be a time spent within your service where you motivate people to give the tithes and the offering to keep the ministry running.
Okay. And the other side of the coin, where people now just forget that there is a message to spread, and they think this message is all about money, money, money.
Okay. Now, we can talk from, if we had all the day, we can talk from the two sides of the coin. And what I mean by that, number one, there is a spiritual side when it comes to money in the church. There's a spiritual aspect, and there's also the physical aspect. I just gave you the physical aspect. The building has to be paid for, the utility has to be paid, the equipments in the church, take for instance like in the studio, every lighting here costs money, they have to be paid for. However, there is the spiritual aspect. The scripture says you never come to the presence of God empty-handed. It is scriptural that I think
what scripture is that?
You can find that in Leviticus. You can find that in the Old Testament, practically in the Old Testament.
The Old Testament, which predominantly was wept away from Jesus dying on the cross for us, where you were asked to make sacrifices, even blood sacrifices, where you were asked to come with something in your hand. I thought when Jesus died, he obliterated a lot of those things.
Actually, if to say the Old Testament has been wept away,
just a significant portion of those issues of sacrifice and offerings.
Nothing actually in the Old Testament has been wept away.
Okay, so Jesus dying.
Here's the statement of Jesus, and I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah, man of God, you're the authority, so we got our layman opinion. I'm happy you educated.
Here's the statement of Jesus. He said, I came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. So nothing about the Old Testament is abolished. Okay. It all still stands. And one thing I want us to understand here in the studio and our viewers out there, there is a vast difference between the spiritual world and the physical world. Nothing in the spiritual world changes. It's still there. It's the same fact. It's the same reality. It remains forever and ever and ever and ever. However, there's a twist side we can talk about, but nothing has been abolished.
Okay. But when Jesus came and said, I'm the offering, I'm the lamb now. I've made the sacrifice. So all the thing about animal and blood sacrifices, he said, do away with that. That was required in the Old Testament.
I would prefer using the language, he is the ultimate price.
Okay.
But that does not wipe away our responsibilities. Like I said, there's two sides to the coin. There's the physical aspect and the spiritual aspect. Though he's the ultimate sacrifice, yet that does not prevent us from giving to the church that the bills will be covered up, that the building will be covered. I give you, for instance, our church on my birthday. I was born on April 4th. So a few Wednesdays ago was my birthday. Our church just under I would say a little under 100 members. Membership list, membership wise, we are close to 200 membership on our roster, but actual attendance, you're talking about 100 or a little bit under 100.
Yeah.
However, just this gone April 4th, my birthday, we were at the Holiday gas station at the corner of Welcome Avenue and Brooklyn Boulevard, dividing free gas to every car that came in. Funded by us, paid by us. Nothing from the state, nothing from outside source. Everything came from within. We also feeding 100 family in this month, 100 family, and that has nothing to do with our feeding program we have in Africa. That has nothing to do. Where does the money come from? It comes from the very folks sitting on the pews. We are talking to them, encouraging to pay the tithes and the offering. So there are a lot of things we do with tithes and offering. I think it's the concept. If folks do not understand the concept behind why we ask for tithes and offering, there's going to be a lot of notions out there. But if you were to sit down and find out what are we doing with the funds, then you come to realize it's necessary that we talk about money in the church.
Yes. So how much time would a man of God actually have to dedicate to this whole idea of money? I mean, maybe what we're getting at is that there's this overemphasis. When you go to the church, from the beginning is money, from the end is money. In fact, the offerings, some churches will have 3 or 4 different offerings for everything, and when you bombard your audience with all that about money business, you take away. Now, people should have, it's a mandate from the Bible that, hey, this percentage of your monthly income,
10% of your monthly, or every income for the matter of fact, 10% of that goes to God. And we can look at that from the religious standpoint, from the spiritual standpoint. Yes, I agree with you. It should not be overemphasized. However, we cannot root it out. We cannot zip our mouths because we are afraid that the world is going to condemn us. It's necessary that we talk about it. However, I think the primary message is that Jesus died to restore us to our original purpose. However, here is something we need to understand in the Christendom. In the Christendom, there is what we call the responsibility of God. This is what God said He will do from His standpoint. And the church also has her responsibility. And part of the church's responsibility is praying, studying this Bible, loving one another, being the hand of Jesus Christ into the community. But part of the responsibility is tithing. And I think the platform in the church has to be used just to remind folks, hey, don't forget, here is part of your responsibility. I agree it should not be overemphasized. I should not take an entire message to just talk about money. However, there are times where I can say the teachings for today is going to be based on our responsibility, based on tithes and offering.
Okay. Folks in television land, you watching Africa Rendezvous Ivoire TV show. Pastor Joe Logan is throwing some light on this controversial issue of tithes and offering, which by all nature should not be controversial, because God in His word mandated that we have this obligation, that in as much as His word must be spread, there are vehicles that must be used, and some of those vehicles will actually require money. Such is the time that things are getting so expensive. Such is the time that Pastor Logan can reach multitude of people. He wouldn't have done that 15 years ago. And in as much as he's reaching multitude of people, the means to reach those people really require money. And if God said, hey, I am not going to come down from heaven and provide money. No, I'm going to use you. I'm going to empower you to have the strength to work. And when you work, your obligation is to spread the word. That very word that kept you existing, that very word that gave you your monthly income, you have to contribute to the existence and the preaching and the spreading of the word. Our only concern here is that, again, there are some people who overstretch things. And when you overstretch things, you dilute the purpose. More than diluting, you defeat the purpose. So constantly we have to remind ourselves of those overzealous pastors who think that, hey, they can overstretch the band, because by doing that, they just break a lot of people away from God. But the central theme remains that we have our obligation. Pay our offerings, pay our tithes. If you don't do that, you're robbing God. We do understand that. Pastor Logan, finally, your flock is out there watching this program. What is your final message to them?
Now, I want to just touch this in my final message. When we talk about overemphasizing on tithes and offering, I'm learning something in life that there is always an intent behind every action that is exhibited by us. So the question is, if some pastors are overemphasizing on tithes and offering, there has to be a reason why. And I think probably one of the reasons why they do overemphasize is because the people within the congregation probably do not understand the responsibility in terms of tithing and offering, or they have understood it but are not doing it. Because realistically, let us face the fact, if everyone is meeting up with their obligations, I will have no reason to overemphasize. If the bills of the church are being met, I will have no reason to overemphasize. I have seen churches that even our church at that time, we don't even talk about money, because why, people are giving without us requesting. But if the bills are overdue and the doors is at the point of being shut, you have to talk about it. And the next thing is, why are we talking about money? Is the pastor laying emphasis on the money because he wants to enrich himself? That's a whole different topic. Or he wants to meet the bills of the church, or he wants to do missions. Now, if he wants to do missions, if he wants to meet the bills of the church, and there is nothing wrong with the pastors also eating something. That was something I wish we had the time to talk about. If he's laying emphasis on that to be a hand to Jesus in the community, I would say yes, let him lay a little bit of emphasis on it. Money is needed. Finances are needed in the church, and it is needed to help us accomplish what our master wants us to accomplish. So to all of you out there watching me, and whether you are a believer or not, I want you to understand it takes money to run every institution. It takes money. We are reminded every 2 weeks when we take our paycheck, we look on our pay stock and realize that Uncle Sam just took something out. Why? Because the taxes we paid helps to run the country. The same way the tithes and offering we pay in the church helps to run the church. And I think it's necessary that we do that. So I encourage you, do it. Don't question it. I know there are folks who are abusing it, but it is not every pastor that is abusing it.
Okay. And that's the word, they abuse. That's where the focus is coming from. They abuse. That's the whole idea, the idea of accountability. That's a whole new ball game. And Pastor, I didn't really bog you down with that. With where some pastors are really not accountable, where some pastors are using the money for other purposes, maybe unknowing clearly to their congregation, and that is a whole new topic we'll discuss in our subsequent production. But thanks again for making the message very clear to us that we are mandated by God. What's it, Malachi, or what is that?
Malachi chapter 3, verses 9 and 10.
Is there anywhere in the New Testament that reminds us to pay our tithes and offerings?
Now, I will be realistic and upfront with you. There is nowhere in the New Testament that talks about tithe. But every part of the New Testament, almost every part of the New Testament talks about giving. Now, what is tithe? Tithe is also giving, but giving of your 10%. Jesus never talked about tithe, but he talked about giving. Now, if you should watch the teaching of Jesus, there's a possibility we are requested to give more than our 10%.
Okay. Yeah, well,
and that would take all day to talk about.
Okay, folks, keep giving. Make sure you give, and you have the right to hold your pastors accountable. If they cannot be transparent and accountable, you have a right to kick them out, because God does not want corrupt leaders. God bless you. Thank you. I'm out. Thanks a lot, Pastor.
Thank you so much.